I was not in the Brotherhood, but it's far out that two people that started Sound Spectrum were in the Brotherhood and were really into that trip. It was a big ego trip. LSD, and I was right in the middle of it, dude. I was living in these guys' house when a guy arrived at the Orange County airport with suitcases full of Afghani Primo. And they got right through customs without any problem. But that was in about 1967, 68. They hadn't caught up to what was happening yet. And they didn't believe or understand that Laguna Beach was becoming a center for this. I lived with these guys. Yeah, when this guy rolled in, it was kind of a celebration. His name was Travis. I didn't know him very well. What I did was stay in the background. I was just the artist. And I did 4 full-page illustrations. They're in that book. 4 full-page illustrations for taking LSD. I don't think it's ever been done, dude. Nobody's ever advertised in a public paper to take LSD. It's the only time I've ever heard of it. All of those illustrations were done in pencil first, and I was on a high dose of LSD. I learned to draw on LSD, and the only way I can explain it, it's hard to talk about because it sounds like magic. It doesn't sound like it could possibly happen the way it happened to me. One night I was out at the Brotherhood's house, and I actually had a room in the basement, which was connected to the garage. This was on a hillside that came up from Laguna Canyon Road. Today you can't see the house because there are all these willows that have grown in the stream that runs through the canyon, and it blocks out the house that sits up on that hill. So anyway, I'm in the lowest level. They had given me some LSD, believe it or not, to test. Take it and see what you think. Okay. All right. Yeah, sure. I was kind of a pilot at that time. I had been taking LSD off and on, no big deal. It wasn't like an all the time thing. No, it was a special deal when I would do it. Later on in life, when it got into the 70s, I was dosed a couple of times. To get back to drawing on LSD, I took this LSD that they gave me, and I thought, well, I'm going to try a little, just, I would take a whole bunch and see what happened. No, I'm going to take a little at a time. I'm like a professor of psychedelics. Yeah. And so I take a small amount. I'm coming on. An hour or two are passing by. I think I might have taken another spot. Because, see, what they would give me is a baggie full of powder about an inch deep at the bottom of it. And just to wet your finger and touch that is a major dose. Very little of it goes a long, long way. And I knew this. So, and this was purple. This was the baggie that held probably 5,000 doses of purple barrels, as they were called in those days. So at a certain point, I'm coming down the other side. Everything's cool. The front side of LSD is like being tied to the front of an express train at about 150 miles an hour. It's radical. And then when you reach the peak, as we used to call it, you come down the backside, and that's when all the patterns, all the fairy tale, it's incredible. There's so much going on, and you're walking through it. I remember at one time doing this, I was breathing in the patterns, and then I would breathe them out. Can you believe that? I got the idea. My drawing board was right around the corner of the wall, but it was private, which was cool. So I just walked around the corner and sat down at my drawing board, grabbed a pencil, and the first thing that happened was the pencil melted right through the drawing board. Well, how am I going to draw with this? So I'm trying to figure it out. And I decided I'm going to simply make I was out there, dude. I mean, everything was transparent, and I was turning into a one-celled animal. The universe. I have the pencil in my hand, the drawing board is in front of me, an empty piece of paper, and I thought to myself, I'm going to draw a simple circle-like sun with rays, just lines coming off of it. I'm going to see if I can do that. Dude, I got into drawing something. I followed the pencil. I got more and more into it. It became three-dimensional. Pretty soon, this bizarre creature was on the paper in front of me in 3 dimensions. It was, whoa, man, I gotta tell you. Well, I kept drawing, and I was filling it in more and more and going over the lines. I got sleepy and tired, and I crashed. The next morning, when I woke up, I was still a little buzzed, not too bad, because I didn't take a very high dose now. So I go around the corner of the wall to look at my drawing board, and on my drawing board was this drawing. It was drawn on its own, and because I had drawn it that way, it almost started taking me back into being high as I was the night before. It started vibrating and moving, and I'm going, I did this. And I did. I laughed like a crazy professor in his laboratory. I did it. After that, and I've seen many movies like that. I've seen a lot of these mad professors, and I started feeling like one because here I am discovering this. Who will believe me? You know what I mean? How can I control this? A few days later, I'm tripping out, and I knew some people in town. I'm living out in the canyon. I started doing my work by setting it up before I took the LSD. I would set up the drawing paper with the proportions so that I didn't go psychedelically out of control. So those lines would keep me inside. So when I did a job like I did for each one of the pieces that were in the free press, I would get the idea in my head. It would appear on the paper, and I would, in a few minutes, it would appear. It was almost like cheating. I couldn't believe it. To me, those years that I was taking LSD and drawing, I look back on it like going through 4 or 5 years of art school, all in that time by just drawing on LSD. I learned to do the figure in such a way. Well, dig this. I had this girlfriend, and she was like, she was very intelligent, and she was just like a regular chick, and she was very Laguna-ish, and she's fairly well known down there. She's still alive. She's about 3 or 4 years younger than me. And anyway, we were like pals, and we would take LSD together without any of the hang-ups, just like 2 kids adventuring. We would get together, and like I say, she was intelligent. She was no ding-dong, and we became friends with benefits. I ended up having many friends with benefits over the years. Gee, I was with her off and on for, 30 years at least. Anyway, and that's when she was 18 and I was 24. I had just moved to Laguna, and I could go into that. So we went up to the Ortega Mountains, and we took a walk along the stream. At that time of the year, and back in those days, the water was running very nicely, and the weather was great. And here we are coming on to LSD. I also had a drawing board with me of good size, something like 16 by 20, and my favorite pencils. There we are, hiking along and coming on more and more to LSD. I started drawing. The drawings I did that day, I ended up using in other jobs I did a few years later. For instance, I used one of the drawings in the 70 calendar. The 1970 calendar. Golden metallic lady coming down on the left. That's her. And that's straight from the drawing I did on LSD, walking along the stream. I have the original drawing still. 1970 calendar. Yeah, and there's that door underneath. And then there's the fish with the pipe.
Yeah.
That's the one with the far out sun. Oh, dude. dig this. On the night in 1969, when they landed on the moon, I was on LSD. And I drew that sun while I was watching them land, because what I was doing, you see, I had this tool shed in this guy's backyard. It had a cot and a drawing board. Now, this tool shed wasn't like any other tool shed. It had wall-to-wall carpeting and windows with curtains in them. So I'm living in this thing, kind of hippie style, and I'm working on the 1970 calendar. I go into the house, and this guy was watching them land on the TV. So here I am, really out there on LSD, and I'm going between the TV when they're landing on the moon and my drawing of the 70 calendar. And in between, this is what was really far out. In between the house and my studio, I was out under the stars blazing on LSD. And I was looking up at the stars, just practically gone. You know what I mean? And then I come back down into what looked like a cartoon house. The tool shed, like I say, was more like a dollhouse. And so I would go inside of it to my drawing board, and there would be this drawing just vibrating all over the room. And then me putting touches on it in between landing on the moon and coming back out to work on this drawing. And I ended up doing the whole drawing in one night on acid, yes. I believe it was orange sunshine. But anyway, as you can see, back in those days, I really experimented with LSD. I need to write this down and get it to the public. A lot of people don't know that any of this happened. I'm not the kind of guy to run around bragging. And besides that, some of the stuff I do is, you just don't go around talking about it. I kind of was doing my own thing and creating my own world. About this time, I was coming up with the other icons in my work, moving into the 71 calendar and then into the 72 calendar. I wasn't so much using LSD by 72. I was somewhat not thinking about it. I didn't go there. That's when a few years later, a couple of people thought it would be funny if they dosed me.